Welcome back, rugby fans, to another great episode here with the Run, Pass, or Kick interviews. Reintroducing your team from the Rugby Rant. My name is Ty Braga, your host for today's activities, alongside Rob, the Hammer Hammerschmidt. But more importantly, introducing in the hot seat here today, we have Elaine Vassie from, of course, the Dallas Jackals. But before we dive into a little bit more about her, your experience, and of course, put it to the Run, Pass, or Kick interview test, we're going to hand you over to Rob Hammerschmidt to let you know how it works.
Well, first of all, Elaine, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
No worries. It's always a pleasure. I think we've been working on this one for quite some time because, just such a fascinating story. But I want to talk to the fans, particularly those who have never been with us for a Rugby Rant RPK or Run, Pass, or Kick. So I want to explain what that looks like. So for those that are uninitiated, Run, Pass, or Kick works like this. We're going to pose questions to Elaine, and we're going to phrase each question or prompt each question with Run, Pass, or Kick, in which case, just like any good rugby player, or in this case, rugby coach, they've got to have their arsenal of options in front of them. And in this particular case, Elaine has three options. She can run with a question, which is to say she's going to go ahead and answer it. She can pass a question, which is to suggest that she's not interested in answering that one. Maybe it would put her in a tight spot. Or she can have a little fun, put us on the defensive, put us on the back foot, and go ahead and kick the question to us. And that just means that she wants us to answer the question in a way that we think she would answer it. And just like any good rugby player, she can direct her kick. She can tell Rob to answer it. That's me. She can tell Ty to answer it, which, of course, I would always want her to do. And if she doesn't suggest anybody, then whoever asks the question will go ahead and answer it. So, Elaine, are you ready for the Run, Pass, or Kick challenge?
As I'll ever be.
All right, awesome. So this is a rather interesting one. Frankly, we have a friend of ours, Dallin Stanford, well known in many rugby circles. He loves the turn of interesting names and phrases when he's announcing a big match. And so, I'm a big fan and perhaps a wannabe, maybe. I don't know. But you guys have an interesting player on your team that I believe will make for an interesting nickname. Back rower from the land down under, Charlie McGill, is a rather big unit that's going to join the pack in 2022. Can we officially give him the nickname Charlie McKilla Gorilla?
I wasn't sure where you were going to go with that because I thought there's quite a few choices you could have. I'm going to pass to you because I'm curious to hear what your thought process were and how many options ran through your mind before you got to Charlie McKilla Gorilla.
Oh, well, that's easy. And of course, the answer is yes, because it is an awesome nickname. But it's because I was a fan of cartoons when I was a young lad, and they used to have McGilla Gorilla was a cartoon, and I think it was more like a kind of a puppet character on the Banana Splits. And, so McGilla Gorilla was his name. And so it immediately popped in my head. As soon as I saw McGill, I was like, oh,
and it just rolls with the tongue nice and easy. I could hear the commentators, Dallin Stanford, calling it out in the infield action.
100%.
It's kind of one of the unique things that I happen to love, how it's evolved in the MLR, that all these nicknames have kind of emerged, and with them, the personalities that represent those. So I guess that's gonna be an interesting one to see what characters stand out on the field immediately for Dallas.
Yeah, I'll look forward to Charlie's assessment of the nickname as well. What that's going to be.
Right. Well, how could you not love it? That just sounds cool, right?
I just want to, I want trademark rights. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Royalties. Every time that word is said on TV is like cha-ching. So, Elaine, let's turn our attention to, of course, you. And we always like to use that first one as a little bit of an icebreaker. It sets the tone. And as you know, we like to be able to have fun here on the Rugby Rant podcast show. And we always try to promote that fan-first culture. So I want fans to make sure that they know that you're obviously got an important rugby resume. I'm going to list just a few of the highlights here so fans can begin to understand what sort of rugby pedigree you've got. Starting out in Manchester with the Manchester Rugby Club, your participation there was at a head coach level. So, you're going back to 2006 for your first coaching. You moved to Italy for DAK Mantova. It's the Griffins Rugby Club. Now you're stepping into the director of rugby role. Then back to Scotland for the assistant coaching for the women's sevens. Come back to the US then for the Harlequins in Dallas. And then now you find your happy home with the Dallas Jackals. And you have now been promoted to GM. So, really the future of rugby, and certainly in Dallas, is very much so in your hands. And with the rugby experience that you have, I think there's a lot of people that would love to be able to see that type of experience. And that's what they've got. And with that experience, we actually turned that attention looking into researching. Rob does an amazing amount of research, by the way, before any interview. It's almost at the level of stalker-ish.
I was wondering that's where you were going with this. Yeah.
So here lies the next question. It's a bit of fun again. Run, pass, or kick, Elaine.
Yeah.
We recently unearthed a short video in which former players were asked to describe you in 3 words. Starting to sweat there a little, eh? So some of the words that we used to describe you was dedicated, perseverance, dynamic, resilient, passionate, all great words, tenacious. The list really goes on. Here lies the question. What is the one word you would use for people to associate you? What's the one word you would use?
Oh, I will run with it. I think everything starts with honesty. So I'd like it to be honest. And I think you can have fun with that. You can have serious with that, but it's genuine. And I think that what you see is what you get leads to everything else. So that would be mine.
Perfect. I like that. I mean, we know that all the other great descriptions are there, but, that's a very powerful one that I think rugby fans and fans alike around the world love that.
Yeah, and I noticed that was one of the words that was used, too, by some of your former players. And I think that's important for, people in management, for coaches, for GMs like yourself, owners, is I think just players want to be treated honestly and openly. They know it's a business and they can accept some of the consequences that come with that. But I think that's most important to any players, to be treated fairly and honestly.
Right.
And so it's really nice to hear from a leader like yourself.
Especially when you consider it being in a league still in its infancy. Yeah. It's about the relationship. It's about the people that are really driving the success. Just to echo Rob's point, it's of great value to the people you work with to know that they have that trust.
Yeah. I think what you just said there in terms of relationships, that's really key. That's at the core of everything we do. It's a group of people coming together. So actually how well you can understand each other, support each other, that all comes down to us being honest with each other in the first place, right, and having alignment as to what we're looking to do. So yeah, really important, I think.
100%. And, it's interesting. We've talked about, in this early conversation, the league in itself and all the folks who do business in the league. And it's only 4 years old, yet it has made incredible strides to be inclusive. We know Tiffany Afei became the first female assistant coach when she joined Rooney's staff. Kat Roach became the first female official. And by the way, a huge shout out to her. She officiated an international match this weekend. That was awesome to see. She certainly has an incredible upward trajectory. So congrats to her. And of course, you were the first female GM. Not unfamiliar territory for you. This is not the first time you're being a first, right? So run, pass, a kick. Do you see yourself as a role model for women in sport, or are you just another administrator, coach, striving for success in the American sporting landscape?
I have to run with this, but in full disclosure, it's probably the most challenging question I've had through my career in terms of me getting to a point where I'm comfortable with the answer, because I think you just want to do a good job. And I think when you're trying to break into a field that statistically has been male dominated for a period of time, like the last thing you want flagged is probably I'm a woman, because you just want to be capable. You just want to be credible.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to be, judged on what you're doing. And then probably as you get a little bit more comfortable with what you're capable of doing and where you are, then I think there's probably a slight guilt that comes with that, because it should be, I should be comfortable enough being open about that and some of the challenges with that, to actually that then be supportive of someone else, that's potentially looking at that pathway. So that's probably my reason for running with it. But it's certainly not that I am comfortable with a role model label. It's more, I think there's a real need, whether it's gender, race, demographic background that you come from, for you to be able to look and see someone that you can align with and actually go, okay, well, that's, that path has been paved before. There's less reason that I can't do it. And that's the bit that I think is important.
I got to say, I love that answer, because I purposely posed it as this kind of juxtaposition of one or the other. Mm-hmm. And I love how you colored the nuances of that. Talking about the fact that, because I think it's true. A lot of folks, when they enter into a profession and they're one of the first, they are kind of like, hey, I just want to do my thing. I want to mm-hmm. be good at what I do. That's all I care about. But when you're in it long enough, you're doing it long enough, you realize mm-hmm. that there's almost like a greater responsibility. And mm-hmm. I think that's a really great answer. I really appreciate the honesty that you brought forth in that answer.
I appreciate the question. It's definitely one I need to get more comfortable with for the whole reason of that answer. So, yeah.
Excellent stuff.
For so far.
Yeah. So, Elaine, we're going to turn our attention a little bit towards the Jackals. What
That's a good merger.
What's the Jackals? So the Dallas Jackals, man, words tough. So now the Dallas Jackals have had an interesting history already, because Dallas as an organization goes as far back, and some might not even realize, to the origins of the league, although they are yet to field a team. So there's been a lot of changes, a lot of twists and turns, and the story is very interesting for fans who have been following from the beginning. So with that in mind, as the underlying message here, people always want to be able to learn more about how we are where we are. So here lies the question: run, pass, or kick? 2021 was supposed to see the Jackals make their debut in the Major League Rugby season of 2020. You were the assistant GM at the time and had even participated in the college draft. Here's the important factor, though. How did the decision to pull out of the 2021 season, I should correct myself before there, impact the approach to building the roster for this coming season?
Good question. I think probably I will run with it as I start talking. Need to clarify.
Sure. Yeah, we know. Just take the ball and run. You don't have to announce
it. I think to cover off probably some of the history, because I think that's fair to kind of give a bit of insight into that too. From an ownership perspective, I think we've got one of the most experienced sports ownerships groups behind us, and I think it was a really difficult decision for them to kind of postpone. I think, and that was difficult in terms of the players we built relationships with. You're excited to work with. You want to be meeting them. I think the bigger picture behind it is actually it's a long-term sustainable impact on rugby that we want to have. And I think launching, the closer you get because you want to do it, but then things aren't really changing in terms of the COVID in the way that most of us expected would have changed 3 months after the season before had finished. It just becomes more and more apparent that's not going to let you launch in the way that you'd want to launch, to do credit to the league, to the players, to the area. Hence the kind of postponement. In terms of recruiting for this year, the players that we had last year essentially were through a dispersal draft to other teams in the league, or had the option to choose not to play. What that meant was essentially those teams got first dibs on those players for this year. So essentially, unless that team said, no, we don't want to retain them for the following season, they're not our players to take, which is kind of, it's great because some of the guys that came in and seeing them in the league and seeing how well they did, there's an immense sense of happiness to see them, achieve that, particularly with, difficult circumstances before it. And at the same time, you're like, oh, but we spoke to you first and we really wanted to work with you. So that's a kind of a strange thing. But I think the good thing now is when we've looked at our recruitment and more about who we are and how we want to build, and haven't had an extra year for that, I think there's some great people in the league, already. And then the team of people that we're bringing together, are really excited to have them here. And I think all are very much aligned with the vision of want to impact on the development of domestic talent and want to play entertaining rugby. So that's huge for us, I think, in Dallas and the bigger picture too.
Yeah, there's already a perception that's brewing in the rugby fan communities that the appearance that Dallas is very much so wanting to be able to develop local players. And by local players, I extend it not only to Texas-based players, but of course by the nation of the US. Okay. Yeah. So that's really important. And we know that you're in a unique position, even though, like as you pointed out, it's a downside that you had what you thought was the perfect makeup of a team. It didn't fall the way that it should. Not everybody's going to come back, but it has presented a great opportunity because you're starting from zero to build the type of team that you want and install the culture in that team that you want from the start. And one of those points is to be able to promote players from local unions, from local clubs. And we'll talk about this. I'm probably going too far into it. Rob's like, you're giving away questions here, man. But my point is that perception's already starting to brew in the rugby communities, that they are focusing on developing local talent.
Yeah, I think to give you a fun stat, if that's not taking us too far off the tangent. So out of the 30,
you're there already. Just keep going.
We'll roll with it. 32 contracted players, if you like. 20 of them US or US qualified. 3 Canadian, 9 foreigners, and they're not all announced yet, but essentially that's our recruitment completed. And that's the kind of breakdown of that we're looking at in terms of being committed to how do we develop domestic talent. And I think for the foreigners that we're bringing in, all of them are here for the journey, the bigger picture, the project. Like it's about us finding the right people that want to either give back an impact on that or want a bit of a different cultural experience and again, they're going to add value there. So
out of curiosity, when you say that they're here for the bigger picture, I mean, what Rob and I have discussed in the past, and Scott, who's normally a partner on the show, he's not here today, but we've always spoken about how like people talk about foreign players, but when you give 3 or 4 years of service to a team in the US, at what point have you given enough to be able to say, well, I'm a part of this journey with you, I'm also putting in the sweat. I'm also putting in the hard yards. So we always hope to be able to hear that when players are brought in from overseas, that it might be an opportunity to see them for 2 or 3 seasons as opposed to the one and done. Do you think that could be a part of the makeup as well?
Out of all our foreigners, all bar one are on multi-year contracts.
Fantastic to hear. I love that because really that's putting down roots and growing a rugby community and building a culture around that team.
100%.
Yeah, and speaking about some of the personnel makeup of the team coming up for season 2022, interestingly, several of those players that were on the 2021 tentative roster, and they found their way back to Dallas for next season. Donation, Tellis, and Matarazzo are just a couple of those. So run, pass, or kick. Is there a player from the dispersal draft that you had on your roster leading up to 2021 that you would love to add to the 2022 roster?
I think you could say, look, there would be multiple just on the basis of we recruited them, we felt they were right, yes, but I'm going to kick because I'm really curious on what the answer is, and I'm going to go to Ty because he said don't kick to him. So we'll find out if he was honest.
I got to tell you, I can't think of one that it would be right now. My happiest is to be able to see College of Nation back there, honestly. But out of the other names, the Nation for me, I know he's not one of the draftees there, but he moved to San Diego, really good player, young player, South African born, so obviously I'm biased. But yeah, who else would that have been though? Jeez, I can't think, Rob. You're gonna have to help me out here.
I think there's, I think you could say, look, there would be multiple just on the basis of we recruited them, we felt they were right, yes, but I'm going to kick because I
Was Petzer originally on that roster? I can't remember.
Robbie
No,
Petzer.
Robbie Petzer was actually, wasn't he? Yes. Okay, then my answer is Petzer because he ended up in Atlanta. Thank you, Rob. Because Petzer,
I knew if I mentioned a
Robbie's-
South African, Ty would bite.
Robbie and I have the same birthday, by the way. So he was a former Raptor. Then,
Yes,
of course, that's right. I remember that because I was still talking to him because he was going to go to Japan. That didn't work out because of COVID, right? And he missed like the window to go in there. It's like, oh, I got no club, but I still got a visa to play in America. I'm like, hey, Dallas is looking for players. I swear, I actually probably did say that. So that's my pick, Robbie Petzer. He had a great season. Now he's playing actually in South Africa, though. But how do you feel about Petzer?
Yeah, I think I definitely felt for him in terms of Colorado to Japan and COVID. And, and I think when we looked at him last year, in terms of a bit of variability as to where you can play him, like
10, 12, he was good at both.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good to know he's playing elsewhere, and exciting times ahead for him.
Yeah, he's moved back to South Africa now, playing for the Pumas in the Currie Cup, and it's a good standard of rugby, of course. So you never want players who, especially young players, to feel like they don't have options anymore in rugby. Yeah. No matter where they may go, it's just great that they're continuing their rugby, and that's kind of the sentiment here.
Yeah,
you're welcome, Ty.
Thank you for saving me.
Hey, we know you were being honest then when you said don't put me under pressure, don't kick to me. So there's
yeah. I warned you. Everybody watching the show knows that I am terrible in receiving the kicks. So apparently I'm true to form again. Thank you very much, Elaine. It'll be the last time you join us on the show. So with that being said,
I rather like Elaine. I can't agree with that.
Rob,
you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah. Obviously, right? So let's turn our attention to the next question while we have the opportunity. And then after that, we're going to be sharing a few words from one of our sponsors. And again, a quick reminder to our viewers, if you're tuning in and you like what we do, you can continue to get more great content by following us online under the handle @Rugby Rant Pod, where you can find us every Monday with a new interview on our run, pass, or kick format with another MLR insider or rugby insider across North America. And in addition to that, don't forget, you can also see us for our Rugby Rant debate episodes on the Rugby Network every Friday. And that, again, you can find us under the handle @Rugby Rant Pod for more content. So with that being said, we turn the attention back to you, Elaine. Run, pass, or kick. The boys at the Rugby Rant have long been saying that the MLR roster should start with the spine players, which is the 2, 8, 9, 10, and 15, for those of you who are not familiar. That has overseas experience, I should add. With that so in mind, Dallas has Frings at 2, Donation at 9, Pennell at 15. Did you consciously follow this philosophy when you built your roster?
Interesting, because I think at Run, a lot of people do talk about that in terms of spine of the team, and some would probably add a tight head into that kind of
into that mix, for sure.
I think for us, when you're starting from scratch, you're mindful of what market are you operating in. So actually in the American market, and with us having a domestic talent lean, what is available in those positions that you feel is most MLR ready, if you like, or has the aspirations to move that fits the style of play that we're looking for. So we were probably mindful of more relative to America, what's available or what's likely to be available that's already got league experience. Same for Canadian players kind of coming through. And then beyond that, it was who's the right people and has the right style of how we want to be playing that factored in a little bit more than necessarily the traditional spine-only approach.
Right. I think that's fair. Yeah. I mean, and for those that are not familiar, when we talk about the spine, for the general casual fan tuning in, they're considered some of the more technical positions, in addition to, I don't want to use the term, have a greater rugby IQ. But yeah, they're key positions for most, and that's why you kind of see them. But I'd also like your addition of the tight head though too. That's one that's, some people would argue that's the first position you fill, right? But yeah, interesting point. I like it. Thank you.
And speaking of tight heads, we
Perfect
have
way.
to perfect
Perfect
segue. We have to throw a shout out to one of our amazing sponsors, been with us throughout the MLR season, Tighthead Brewing Company is Chicago's premier location to watch rugby and enjoy quality ales and lagers for all seasons. Located in Mundelein, Illinois, in the heart of Lake County, owner Bruce Durr and his Tighthead staff will ensure you are kept well hydrated so you don't miss a single scrum. Tighthead's tap room is like the familiar rugby clubhouse in which friends and teammates can meet, socialize, and enjoy a wide variety of brews on tap, and they cover the gamut from IPAs all the way to dark brews that are barrel aged. They throw an amazing lineup, just like the Dallas Jackals will, of their brews. And they also have a great number of acts coming in each and every weekend to perform that are from the local market. So, hey, Chicago, when you want rugby, Tighthead Brewing Company will satisfy your thirst. Tighthead, it's worth more than a try. So now we're ready for our quick tap segment. For those that don't normally join us, this is where we give our guest a this or that, and they can't pass on this one, nor can they kick it, and Ty is absolutely thankful for that. So we're going to give Elaine just two choices, and they're usually just a lot of fun, no pressure. It just kind of gives us some insight into the personalities that are in the league. And, of course, it's pretty clear we have a tremendous personality in front of us joining our show tonight, and we're excited about it. So the first one, I'm going to get close to home here. Which one is Mama's dog, Bilko or Nala?
Bilko was the first. Before I had Bilko longer than my husband and I have been together. So he's 14 and a half now. He'll be 15 next year. So, yeah, Mama's dog.
Special place in Mama's heart for Bilko. Okay.
100%.
Good to hear. Well, of course, in the Rugby Rant, we're a big fan of dogs. All of us, Scott, Ty, myself, we all have our dogs. Scott's adding to the mix almost on a daily basis, I think. But nevertheless,
Rob's dog's name is Nola. So Elaine's like, oh, I like that it's a rugby name, but it's the wrong one.
Yeah, exactly. It's good, but yeah.
Well, if we got another one, I'm pretty sure my wife would not let me name it Jackal. Not that she has a problem with Jackal. I think I've run out on the rugby names. It's pretty much locked. Something else.
Jacqueline.
Yeah, you can work around it. You can get there.
It would get confusing with my younger guy named Jackson. So, anyway. Next one. Number one team in the world. This is a hotly debated question. South Africa or New Zealand?
New Zealand. Sorry, Ty.
Elaine, you are not coming back on the show.
It's all right.
But it's okay. I don't dismiss that for entertainment value. Yeah. New Zealand can deliver a more exciting product.
100%. All right. We'll get to the Jackals now. Better Jackal kit. Darks or lights?
Oh.
Even I think that's a tough one.
Lights, because we don't have to wash it. Whereas if it was my kit that I had to wear and wash after, it would be darks.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And probably the lights are a little better for that hot Dallas sun. Yeah. Later on in the season, I'm sure you're going to appreciate the lights at home.
For sure.
Okay, we talked a little bit about this, but I'm gonna hem you into a position here. More critical position since you're building a team, 9 or 10.
Oh.
Elaine's like, I didn't expect real rugby questions.
Yeah, 9 for tempo of the game.
Okay, yeah. I get that. I mean, we have this debate often. Who's the key? Yeah.
And what's interesting is we talk about New Zealand and South Africa here a couple questions ago, but for those that do watch the international game, I mean, look at the difference that Nugget brings to New Zealand's attacking game when he's in there versus Finlay Christie, for example. He's just such a crisp passer, knows where he wants to go with the ball, directs his forwards and backs like a field general, and it makes a heck of a difference in the scoreline usually. So, all right, last one. Future of development in the United States, college or academies?
These are rough.
Yeah, normally, Rob does is it what's your favorite drink? Is it beer or wine? For you, it's like
Yeah,
college
yeah.
academy system, or is it?
No, I wanted
Oh,
people to know that Elaine means business, man. That she isn't a pushover.
I am gonna say college, and I'm gonna justify my answer by, um, I think participation. We need participation to grow pathways, and
Right.
actually, college is a normal pathway to professional sport in the US. So actually, in terms of being mindful of that, I think academies can add huge value. That's not me sitting on the fence. That's just like I think there is a place for that. But in terms of what's going to change, it's participation measures that change. It's how many people can we get falling in love with the game, playing the game. How normal can we make it seem in terms of the pathway from a club or a non-competitive sport to it's a college program to it's a pathway to
Right.
professional, the same as your football scenario.
Elaine, I love that. I mean, obviously, we've talked about the fact you're from Paisley, Scotland, and yet, as somebody who's grown up in a foreign competitive environment, foreign rugby environment, foreign from the United States, that is, you've come here and you've easily, I don't want to say assimilated, but you certainly understand the landscape here in the United States, not just rugby landscape, but sporting culture and sports landscape. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you understand and are able to adapt and change and et cetera is exciting.
And I'll be honest though, too, for me, having come from South Africa, the idea of college, introducing most of your players to rugby and growing that talent seemed an odd concept. Then the whole concept of the draft seemed odd to me. But in the sphere of sports in the US, it does make sense to use the assets that are available right now and boost the strength of them. So, I like that. And for you, Elaine, I'm pretty sure that you're also used to on that end of the world, the academy model. Mm-hmm. So, here you get to be able to see and be objectively looking at it from both sides.
Yeah. And I think there's space for both. But I think in terms of we're in America, it's not about rehashing what's somewhere else. It's about looking at what's the landscape here and actually how do we do the best things for the people in the pathways in that landscape. I think it's important to be mindful of how things normally function and how do we work with that as opposed to against it.
And on that note, we've had these conversations and different debates going back as far as to the show that rugby in America is in a very unique landscape. It's a saturated sports market, but rugby is unique to how it's being applied here. So organically, it's growing in a way different. And it can't be directly compared to how France does it or how South Africa does it or how New Zealand does it. They don't have the same mechanisms in place to catch players and to bring them up through the ranks and to be able to coach them from young ages. So we need to use, exactly as you said, what works for America. Mm-hmm. I like that. So let's talk a little bit more about you and your rugby experience, because now my fans watching the show should already know that, well, Elaine knows what she's talking about. That's why Rob has put it to some extra tough questions here today. So let's draw the attention to your now time as the GM. Now, run, pass, or kick. As the general manager of the new team, what is the biggest challenge of your job? Biggest challenge in your job as the GM now of a new team.
If I kick it to you, because I'm curious, can I then come and steal the ball back? And then if there's kind of like an opportunity to right. So I'll be nice and I will kick to Rob.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Well, I'll probably knock it on so you can have it back as quickly as you wish.
I didn't factor that one in. I had faith. Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's trying to strike that difficult balance. Obviously, in the league, there is a salary cap, not only in totality or the aggregate for the team, but also for individuals. Mm-hmm. And the challenge of bringing players here, they're going to raise the level of the game, that are going to be able to create a competitive or result in a competitive team, especially given what LA did this last season. But then balancing that with trying to maintain the integrity of the salary cap, both as a team and individually. And then also kind of having an eye on, as clearly the Dallas Jackals do, of trying to grow the game in America domestically and organically. It's like this very difficult balancing act, and that I think is going to be one of the biggest challenges for.
And I don't know where Rob went.
I mean, the challenge is his internet connection, or
so not only did Rob knock it on, but apparently he was sent off the field too. So let me pick up where he left off, though. And so I think if I had to boil it down to one thing, obviously it's very difficult to make sure that it's just one thing. Rob, you got sent off. You got a yellow card. Yeah. You're in the bin for the moment. So if it's one thing, I guess it's just to make sure that people temper their expectations, because you can't be expected to do it all in one season, right? You can't hit the field and have an academy team set up and to have the salary caps figured out, to have a winning team from day one. You can't have all these things. So I think it's managing expectations is probably the toughest job as a new GM with a new team, if I had to pick one thing.
I think it's interesting because you both touched on probably the 2 points that would be there. I think the salary cap for us, we're really honest about here's what the cap is, but we want to run a model where we have 32 players that are contracted, and those players are every session that we do. It's not some part-time, some are in and out. It's everyone's every session. So it doesn't take a mathematician to kind of figure out divide this by this, and you don't get to great numbers. So we won't hit the max individuals for any player that we're signing, because it's about having the right people on the journey. But whilst that's a challenge, I think for us, it certainly allowed us to know from the off, if someone's serious about the project, like it's because they're not coming for a paycheck. They're coming for they could go elsewhere and earn a bigger paycheck. If you're talking about kind of the foreign players that we're bringing in, they're coming because they want to contribute something. They want to collaborate with us. They want to grow. So as much as that's a challenge, I think it's actually a useful one to have. The expectations, and this is, I think, outwardly as well as inwardly for me, like what we want to do and our aspirations are really big. Like we want to challenge how the game's played. We're saying we're going to go out there and we're going to play entertaining rugby and we're going to develop domestic talent. The reality is all those things take time. And I think the message on the expectations, a team that's been in here going to their 5th season, and the resources they have and the infrastructure they've got, they've had time to grow that. And at the same time, there's no one we've signed, there's no one that works for us that isn't a real competitor at heart. So it's the balancing the message between saying, hey, this is about the journey and changing the landscape of rugby in the US, and at the same time not sounding like we don't want to go out there and compete, because we absolutely do and we will. But it's that messaging, I think, is probably the most difficult challenge to get right in limited contact with people.
100%. And I want to, it's kind of pertinent here. I want to take an opportunity to cover a question that's been brought to us from a listener. In this case, it's Ross Campbell, and I'm going to paraphrase his question, but essentially a lot of, with the All Blacks USA Eagles game that happened just several weeks ago, there was a curtain raiser, Army Navy, and it was anybody who watched the game came away, especially live, it said it was electric. It was such a great game. Went down to the wire. So exciting. What a great curtain raiser. He wants to know if the Dallas Jackals were going to invite an MLR team to bring, a women's team connected with their city to Dallas when they played Dallas. What Dallas women's team would you invite to be the curtain raiser team to join in on that match?
Interesting. Good question. I think I guess the opportunity as well as the challenge in Dallas is the volume of women's teams that we have. And I think the variety, actually, if you're a woman in the Dallas area, you have the choice between Division 1 through to Division 3 rugby. There's some great half-pitch sevens that are operating that I think is a really good access point to 15s. That's not just sevens on a full-size pitch. And I personally know that was not my area of fun. So I think there's a really good women's, depth to the game. The challenge at the same time is the spread of that across the area and the spread of that across clubs. And I think if we were looking at it as what's the best showcase we could give within Dallas, it's probably looking more to what does a select side look like that represents DFW as a whole. that could play against another women's team elsewhere. Because I think it'd be unfair to pick out one specific club. I think it'd be more about actually how do we represent DFW and all the women's process in there. And at the moment, they're doing the Texas All-Star women's kind of tryouts and games are coming up in the future. So I think something along those kind of lines is a really interesting thing to explore for sure.
I think that's a really important point that you bring out is when you're in a big market, and I come from a big market here in Chicago, and you start picking and choosing teams for things like that and events like that, it starts to others who don't get selected start to feel excluded. And so by doing something like what you just mentioned, a select side or whatnot, is going to allow for everybody to be included in that. And you're not playing favorites, you're just showcasing the DFW, area and what kind of talents.
Rugby is the winner as a whole, right? And the rugby community, and shares in that success.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to move along to our next question. So in the 2021 draft, which just happened here in August, the Jackals had 4 picks. It was pretty clear that you guys wanted to go with an American-focused roster for the most part, because 3 of the 4 picks were American-based. They had Naprosky, Decord Davis, Aaron Gray, all American players. And then Alejandro Torres, while not American, certainly played his rugby here at the collegiate level. This is a group of fast and dynamic players for sure. Some have even said that it would be a base for a good sevens team. So run, pass, or kick. How do these selections represent the way you want to see the Dallas Jackals play rugby in 2022?
So we had 5 picks. It's probably the first pick that I should add on. So Calvin Gentry was our.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, and we'd obviously traded. No, you go. We obviously traded.
We apologize to Calvin Gentry.
He's got his name said more times though, Calvin. Than the
right.
Start. So if we're looking at, I think for us it was about, again, so our process for the draft, to give a bit of background to that. You obviously get the data in terms of the raw data, you get the links to the film, you can watch the collegiate games and find out about people that way. And we have a team of 5 of us that kind of work through that process, and we do a little practice drafts and we discuss kind of the players, what we've seen. And then we make sure we have FaceTime calls with each of them that we've drafted. So we'll actually speak to about 23 players, I think it was this year, in the lead up to the draft. So we get to know them. I think for those guys, it was a blend between personality-wise, what we felt they showed, where they're confident, I guess, already in their ability, but with a level of humility, and actually a desire to grow and be better. And I think that's really important. It's a really delicate balance, because actually you need someone to go on the pitch and assert themselves and want to dominate, but you still want them in the week to be open to learning and growing and keeping moving forward. And I think those 5 guys absolutely showcase that. And then I think when we watch their highlights, in terms of there's an expression of themselves and how they play, and you get to feel like you get to know a little bit of them by seeing their film. I think that's really healthy when we're saying, look, we want to play entertaining rugby. We want a coaching environment where our players collaborate. There's a framework, but it's about how do we adapt to what we see and how do we allow them to express themselves. So I think they absolutely represent those components and what we were looking for.
Out of curiosity, do you feel like the game tape or footage that you had available, and some people have already suggested that it has been better the second time around than the first time around? So, I mean, that has been traditionally one of the struggles, right? Is just being able to get game tape from players from across the country or to see them play.
I think the challenge this year was a lot of people had less game tape, even if the quality perhaps improved because of COVID. Actually, there was limited access. So we'd have looked at a lot of probably more sevens game tape than you would want, but at least it was relevant, good quality film in terms of core skills as a player, but doesn't give you quite so much in terms of functional role. So I think it is a challenge, and I think that's there was obviously the showcase event that was held as well. I'd love to see a scenario where actually that's something we can look to replicate in different areas
across the country.
For that, but I also think, look, the way the college game's moving, and actually the way technology is becoming slightly more cost effective as we all kind of grow through it, that hopefully it becomes more normal to get more video access. So actually we're not judging someone off of one day. We would try and normally watch 3 full games of a player to make a rounded assessment. So we get a feel for it, not just a highlights tape or here's one game. So hopefully I think there's movement generally on that'll be really healthy for the players to be able to show what they're able to do, as well as us see and get to know them a bit better through their tape.
I like it. Thanks for sharing that deeper insight. We've had different conversations about the value of game tape, and obviously you consider it as being very valuable. So hopefully it just gets better and better. So I have the opportunity to share the next question. Run, pass, or kick, Elaine. Former England coach Brian Ashton will be joining the staff as a consultant. What kind of influence will he have over the organization?
Yeah. I will run because I'm super excited to be able to be working with Brian. I think Brian's experience, if you like, and Brian's passion about people, about the learning environment, about how we coach as well as how we play, and really wanting to go back to that phrase I've used before, challenge how the game's played, challenge how we coach the game, challenge what that environment looks like. He's very much a futuristic thinker as opposed to someone that's tied to it gets done this way, so we do it this way. Or this is how it's always been done. So I think he's really, there's no ego with Brian either. So in terms of actually facilitating we can have really open, honest conversations.
There's actual dialogue, yeah.
Absolutely. What do you think? And I'd have first met Brian 12, 13 years ago, maybe, when back at Manchester and working for England Rugby. So open to conversation even then. And if I looked at probably where I felt I was at, capability-wise, coaching-wise then versus now, he'll always know more, if that makes sense, but you're never going to feel like you're not having an open conversation. And I think that's so important when you're building an organization, that actually everyone can put their point forward and be listened to, and actually everyone's open to feeling that they can learn from other people. And I think he models that so well. So it's the combination between the challenge and the how do we play, why do we do things a certain way, and the questioning of it, and at the same time being so positive and supportive. That is an awesome balance for us to have, for sure.
Excellent. We're going to move along here as we're getting close to the end of the questions and the firing squad, if you will. But what I'm really interested in, you talked earlier about that difficult balance of foreign players and managing the salary cap, and also wanted to see a bigger picture and something greater, more future thinking in terms of the American rugby landscape. So herein lies the question: run, pass, or kick. What is the marker for a successful 2022 season for the Dallas Jackals?
I want to kick that because, again, I'm really curious of outside perception, but I will happily round up afterwards as well, if that's not asking too much.
So who do you want to kick it to? I'm happy to try and answer it.
Go for it. Let's go for it.
I said try. So let's see. I mean, the measurement of success, and the reason I wanted to actually bring this back is it's again about managing expectations. If you had a rugby loving audience in Dallas who now was expecting you to come from starting at zero, which is where you've had to rebuild and start again at different stages, and expect you to be able to take the league is unrealistic. But what you want to be able to do is to be able to show that you're competitive in the first season, that you could begin to build the framework from which a team will begin to show their evolution over the next 2, 3, or 4 seasons. You need to define what you want that team to look like season 3 or 4 from here. And what you need to be is just competitive. Now, what I would like to be able to see is that you also form, as a secondary, form a really, really strong, healthy rivalry with the other Texas teams, and you solidify that culture, that rugby culture, because we all know a good, healthy rivalry is good for sport. So I hope to be able to see a really strong outing for a Texas Cup in the next season. So, if that would be the feather in the cap, is a victory there, but a really competitive season overall.
Yeah, awesome. I think look, the expectation bit's spot on, because it's that. I think it's the journey we want to go on. Like our average age of those 32 players, 25 and a half. So actually it's about us saying, look, we are fully committed to the develop domestic talent, play, entertain, and rugby. Come on the journey with us. We're going to compete. We've got aspirations for, to your point, what does it look like in 2, 3, 4 years' time? Because we've signed people on multi-year contracts. Right. So it's about, the investment we're making in American rugby is to do the things that I know are, particularly our local market, they want that. They want better pathways. They want to see what does that look like in terms of people coming through the pathway from the Dallas area. And I hope that they can see that and feel invested in that journey with us. And if we can connect, we share that story, we have some good times through the season with it, then that's a great outcome for 2022.
What's interesting is I've kept in a little bit of contact with Bronson Tellis, from the time he was drafted by Dallas and then it's gone down to Houston, which of course he's a Houston product. And I thought it interesting that he made that transition back to Dallas. And I kind of often in the back of my mind was thinking, it's an interesting choice, to move away from the support system, especially in a fledgling league that like Major League Rugby. And now it all makes sense, right? It's that, I know that he wants to be committed to being a developed player. And it very much it resonates with the fact that you're saying we want to develop players, and that has to be part of the success, right? It's not just about end of this season, but developing guys like Matarazzo and Torres and Gentry and Tellis, and that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, super.
So we're going to pick your brain on something more MLR focused in general. And as we kind of get closer towards the end of our time here on the Run, Pass, or Kick interview, I remind you and our viewers at home that we like to be able to throw the microphone over to our guests come the end of the lineup of questions. So have that in mind, who you might want to send a shout out to, maybe draw a special or attention to a cause that you think is important. But we've got about 2 more questions locked and loaded, and then we're going to give you that chance. And for those viewers that are watching at home, a quick reminder, you can continue to get great content from your team here on the Rugby Rant Pod by following us under that same handle at Rugby Rant Pod on social media, or alternatively, continue to watch us on the Rugby Network every Friday for a new rugby debate. So here we go. As we draw closer to the end of our time, this is a question that is starting to become more and more relevant. And hopefully by the time this time tomorrow, we'll know what the answer is. But we are curious right now, as the social media has been dripping it with the MLR. Elaine knows where I'm going with this one. So here lies the question. Several teams have already hinted to some big news being dropped on Tuesday, November 9th. Would you be willing to give us a sneak peek of what that looks like?
Pass. No.
You can pass if you want. You can pass if you want, but we prefer if you didn't. Just a sneak peek.
I will say I think we're all talking about the same thing, which I think is a thing we're all very excited to see, because then we can plan what our year looks like next year and when we do things.
Elaine, you should probably be in politics. That was a brilliantly vague and yet insightful answer at the same time.
I'm hoping you drew enough from it. So, yes.
So, I like that. So things that we all need to be able to figure out what we're doing next year. That's the general feel there. Okay, I like it.
When not to schedule weddings and that side of things,
definitely. Yeah. You got to make sure certain weekends are locked up with something. Yeah. Okay, I got you. I know what I'm doing tomorrow. Checking out my travel itinerary and booking off certain weekends.
Super.
Speaking of what we're doing in the spring, the big guy, Scott Ferrara, is putting money on the Jackals laying claim to the Texas Cup in 2022. Run, Pass, or Kick, explain to fans why his prediction is a lock.
Oh, pass. I don't want to.
So Elaine did say right up front she was honest, okay? We've never had somebody go pass because I don't want to. But we appreciate that. Well, for me, I would love to be able to see, how I feel. But it's already a great rivalry that's starting to brew. And it's the only state that's going to have 3 professional teams.
Yeah.
So it's a natural breeding ground for this wonderful, healthy rivalry that I hope will blossom. And if the Texas Cup is that conduit to kind of build that culture around it, fantastic. I'm just curious of what it would look like with 3 teams now. Here's
what it should look like, Ty. What should look like, and I'm going to take a cue from the local high school that both my boys played football at. When we play our crosstown rival, the winners of the team of the game, the big rivalry, get to actually have a whole hog cooked by a local barbecue place. Okay, and they cook the whole hog, and all of the teams, like from freshmen all the way up to varsity players, all of that program's players get to partake in consuming the whole hog. So it would only be appropriate in the big state of Texas to have a big event. The winners of the game, the other 2 teams have to buy, or winners of the title, the other 2 teams have to buy. Excuse me, I'm getting excited already.
He's getting excited. He's talking about barbecue.
That's right. Have to buy the whole hog and pay to have it cooked for the winning team.
Nice. Barbecue would be very fitting for Texas, because what I used to think barbecue was when I was in Britain and what I now understand it to be are 2 very different things.
Right.
Texas barbecue is definitely the winner.
Exactly. And tell me a big unit like McKilla Gorilla wouldn't love a damn good barbecue.
You had to get that in again. Yeah.
Right. We're seeing it's come all full circle. We started with your first thing saying that one of the words that described you, or you described yourself, was honest. You certainly have been that all the way through, right to the last question when you responded, pass, because I don't want to. So we appreciate the time that you have spent with us, Elaine, and that moment has come for you to send a shout out to anybody important, or maybe you just want to draw attention to a special cause. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll go back to the first time I came out to Dallas, and we did a tour of a place called Collin County Children's Advocacy Center, and really moving tour. And in terms of the work they do is to try and give a positive, supportive, child-friendly environment for children that are suffering abuse. And actually also at the same time work with other agencies to make sure that's a aligned approach to increase success on prosecutions. I think they do phenomenal work, and they're on our doorstep. And I think that's it really moved when I first visited there. So that would have to be the one I'd give a shout out to today.
Fantastic. And we love that. That's why we love to be able to give these opportunities to our guests, because everybody has something good to be able to share and draw attention to it. And anyway, if we can help just turn a few more people to helping them as well, every bit is important. So once again, Elaine, it has been an absolute blast to be able to have you join us here for the Run, Pass, or Kick interviews. I do remind you are no longer welcome back, though, because it didn't work out in my favor. We'll work out something somewhere along the line. But yeah, it's been fun. And, for us on the show here, all of our team members, including Rob and Scott, who's not with us here today, our message is very simple, and it has rung true from the day that we started this show and will continue all the way through. We on the Rugby Rant aim to grow rugby one fan at a time. But we are able to do that because of people like you, Elaine, who are great ambassadors for the sport. You're a pioneer in an industry and in a world that is, ever changing the sports landscape, and especially here in the US. It's a tough task, but I think certainly people would agree that you're up to the task.
Thanks, guys. It's been awesome being on me today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to pick your brain about how a GM should set up a newly developed MLR team, and it's been an awesome insights, and we've enjoyed every second. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, once again, rugby fans, you have been watching another great episode of the Run, Pass, or Kick interviews with your team from the Rugby Rant podcast show. I remind you for one last time that what we do has been brought to you with the help of our great sponsors at Tighthead Brewing in Mundelein, Chicago. Go check them out. It's worth more than a try. In addition, make sure that you check us out online by following us under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod for more great content every Monday here for another Run, Pass, or Kick interview. And again, in addition, on the Rugby Network every Friday for one of our debate episodes. My name is Ty Braga, your host for today's activities, alongside Rob, the Hammer Hammerschmidt, on behalf of Scott, the Big Guy Ferrari, and of course, Elaine Vassie as our guest of honor. We thank you for watching this episode, and we will see you at the next.